The phone rang at exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was just finishing changing the filter in the coffee maker, the only appliance that was really worth the money. My fingers, knotted with arthritis, froze over the sink. Not many people call an old man like me in Columbia Falls, especially on a weekday. I wiped my hands on the towel hanging on the hook by the sink and slowly walked to the phone. The number was unrecognizable, and I almost pressed reset. But something stopped me, whether it was curiosity or the loneliness that had been eating me up for the last few years. "Hello." My voice sounded rougher than I intended. 67 years of smoking and whiskey don't improve the vocal cords. There was silence on the other end of the line, then a soft clearing of the throat. "Grandpa? It's Trevor." My heart skipped a beat. Trevor, my grandson, the only child of my dead daughter Olivia, the boy I hadn't seen in almost 8 years. "Trevor," I breathed out rather than saying his name. How are you?" "I'm fine," he said in that low-key tone that people use when they only call when they need to. "Yeah, me and Brianna, my wife, we're gonna buy a house." Brianna. I vaguely remembered her from Olivia's funeral. A skinny girl with brown hair and lipstick too bright for such an event. She and Trevor weren't married then. I'd only seen her once, but for some reason I disliked her immediately. Maybe it was the way she held herself as if she were assessing what she could carry around with her. "The house," I repeated. "It's good. Congratulations." "Yeah, thanks." Silence again. 8 years fit into that silence. 8 Christmases, birthdays, anniversaries of his mother's death as I sat alone in my house looking at a picture of my daughter. "Listen, Grandpa," Trevor finally continued. "I hate to ask, but we're a little short on the down payment. Not much, really. Just $12,000. I squeezed the phone tighter. That's it. Money. Of course it was money. Not, "How are you doing alone?" or "I missed you." Just money. 12,000, I repeated, feeling the bitterness rise to my throat. "I'll pay you back," he added quickly. "I got a promotion at work and I'll pay you back in a few months. It's just that the bank wants a down payment right away and we had this chance. A great house at a good price." I was silent, staring out the window at my neglected backyard. There used to be a vegetable garden that Olivia helped me plant every spring. Now it was nothing but weeds and an old rusty grill that I never bothered to throw away after Lorraine, my wife, died. "Grandpa?" Trevor's voice sounded impatient. "Are you in there?" "Yeah," I coughed. "I'm here, just thinking. Look, I realize we haven't talked in a while, after everything that happened with Mom." He stopped talking and I felt the old pain coming back. Olivia died in a car accident 11 years ago, my only daughter. She was coming home late at night and a drunk driver swerved into the oncoming lane. She was 35. Trevor was 17 at the time. At the funeral, I snapped. Blamed my son-in-law for not insisting Olivia stay home that night when the forecast called for ice. A stupid, unfair accusation. But grief is rarely rational. After that, the relationship with her daughter's family broke down. My son-in-law died of a heart attack 3 years later. I learned about it accidentally from the newspaper. I was not invited to the funeral. "I know it was difficult," Trevor continued when the pause was over, "but Brianna and I are trying to start a new life. Maybe even have kids soon. Kids. Great-grandchildren I'll probably never see. You could just send a check," Trevor added quickly, as if he was afraid I'd offer to bring the money in person. "Don't come. Just send the check, okay? We've got a lot on our plate right now with the move and everything. Don't come. Just send a check. That's it." I felt something clench in my chest, not pain, but more like an emptiness that was slowly filling with something dark and bitter. "Will you let me think about it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Of course," there was tension in his voice, "but we have to give the bank an answer by the end of the week, so—" "I'll call tomorrow," I said. "I promise." "Thank you, Grandpa." His relief was almost palpable. "Really, thank you. It means a lot to us." After a brief goodbye, I hung up the phone and sat down at the kitchen table. My mug of unfinished coffee stood where I'd left it, black, cooled liquid with an oily film on top. Like my life, cold and unpleasant tasting. "Don't come, just send a check." 8 years of silence, and here it is. The first phrase my grandson says to me. It's not even "Hi, how are you?" It's like I'm an ATM machine instead of a flesh and blood person who lost a daughter and a wife and has spent the last decade alone in this damn town where every corner reminds me of what I've lost. I stood up and walked over to the cabinet above the refrigerator where I kept a bottle of Jack Daniels. I poured it down 2 fingers and drank it down in one gulp without wincing. A burning warmth spread through his throat and stomach, but it couldn't warm the icy emptiness that had formed inside after the call. $12,000. I had that money. After 40 years behind the wheel of a truck, I'd saved a decent amount. Living modestly. Saving. I was planning on helping Olivia with Trevor's education. But Olivia died, and Trevor moved away with his father, and the money just sat in the account slowly being eaten away by inflation. I could have just written a check. That would have been the easiest thing to do. But something inside resisted. Not greed. I'd realized long ago that money wouldn't bring me happiness. Something else. Perhaps resentment that my only remaining family member sees me only as a source of funding. Or maybe a deeply buried feeling that Trevor should have done more to keep us connected after Olivia's death. I finished my whiskey and set the glass on the table. Then slowly made my way to the living room where framed photographs stood on a shelf, my life collected in a few frozen moments. My wedding to Lorraine, Olivia in her graduation dress, little Trevor on a fishing trip with me and my dad, the last Christmas we'd spent together before the accident. Next to the photos was a small wooden box I'd made with my own hands years ago, a gift from Lorraine for our wedding anniversary. She kept in it the letters I wrote to her when I was on voyages. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to reread them, and then it hit me. I'm not sending Trevor a check. I'm sending him something else, something to make him think about what's really important in life. The morning after Trevor called, it was overcast and freezing. The weather was just right for me. I hadn't slept well. My head was buzzing and my chest felt heavy, as if a piece of lead had settled there. I was sitting in the kitchen twirling an old photograph of Bryce Talbot and me in front of our trucks. The picture was about 20 years old at least. Bryce had been my best friend for almost 3 decades. We started out together as drivers for the same transportation company, sharing the road, roadside diner food, stories about families and dreams of the future. He died 5 years ago of lung cancer, the same fate that awaits most of us truckers who spend our lives in the cab with a cigarette in our teeth. Before he died, he asked me to watch over his son Liam, but I didn't keep my promise. Like so much else in my life, that bond simply dissolved into the everyday worries and bitterness of loss. I set the photograph on the table and rubbed the bridge of my nose. I needed to focus on the task at hand. 2 months ago, something happened that now took on a completely different meaning. It happened in the middle of the week, one of those rare days when I go into town for more than just groceries. My old back needed a checkup, so I made an appointment with a chiropractor in downtown Columbia Falls. After the appointment, feeling a little better, I decided to stop by the Lumberjack, a small bar on the corner of Nankee Street. I wanted to drink a beer and listen to the live music that was sometimes played there on Wednesdays. I was sitting at the counter sipping a pale ale when I heard my name called. When I turned around, I saw a young man rising from a stool at the far end of the bar and heading toward me. I didn't recognize him at first. I hadn't seen him in a while and the bar lights were dim. But when he came closer, there was no doubt. It was Liam Talbot, Bryce's son. "Mr. Fanning," he held out his hand. "I didn't think I'd see you here." I shook his hand, noting the firm grip of his father's. "Liam, gosh, you've grown." He laughed, a hearty, open laugh. The last time you saw me was at my father's funeral. It's been 5 years. I nodded, feeling a prick of guilt. I should have kept in touch with the guy like I'd promised Bryce I would. You want to sit down? I nodded to a nearby chair. I'd love to, he waved to the bartender. Repeat Mr. Fanning's drink and I'll have the same. We spent the next hour exchanging news. Liam had graduated from college, gotten a degree in computer science, and was now working in the IT department of the local hospital. Lived alone, in a small apartment not far from work. I told him a little about my pension, my bad back, and an old house in need of constant repair. After the third beer, Liam visibly relaxed, his cheeks flushed, his voice louder, and his stories more candid. He began to talk about his personal life. You know, Mr. Fanning, I finally got lucky. He leaned closer, as if he were about to share a secret. I've met a wonderful woman. You did? I took a sip of my beer, feeling dizzy. I hadn't had this much to drink in a while. Her name's Brianna. We met 3 months ago. She works at the Horizon Travel Agency on Main Street. Liam pulled out his phone and started flipping through the gallery. Here, look. He turned the screen toward me, and I nearly choked on my beer. A young woman with shoulder-length brown hair, delicate features, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes looked at me from the photo. She stood in front of some kind of waterfall, sunglasses raised on her forehead. Brianna, Trevor's wife, my granddaughter by marriage. I tried to keep a neutral expression on my face, though inside everything turned upside down. Coincidence? No, too many coincidences. Name, workplace, looks. It was her. Beautiful, I squeezed out, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah? Liam grinned, a goofy smile at the man in love. And smart, and funny. You know, she's traveled a lot. She tells stories. He kept talking, and I tried my best to keep the mask of interested listener, though my mind was racing. My grandson's wife is seeing another man, behind Trevor's back. The guy who's asking me for 12 grand for a house doesn't even realize his wife is cheating on him. Liam showed me a few more pictures. Brianna in some restaurant, Brianna in nature, Brianna laughing at something off-screen. In all the pictures she looked happy and carefree, not at all like the one time I'd seen her in person. And you two, been together long? I asked, trying to make the question sound casual. 3 months, Liam answered. We met at Melissa's, you know, on Pine Street. I went in for a coffee before work and she was sitting at the table next to me. We got to talking and, He waved his hands as if to say, that's how it happened. Is she, available? I asked the question, trying to sound like a wise old mentor inquiring about the well-being of a friend's son. Liam gloomed a little. Recently divorced. Tough marriage, she said. Husband controlled her every move, jealous all the time. She doesn't like to talk about it. I nodded, feeling the anger building up inside. Divorced? Trevor never said a word about divorce. He'd said, Brianna and he mentioned kids. Someone was definitely lying here, and I was sure it wasn't my grandson. I understand, I said. Divorce isn't easy. Yeah, Liam sipped his beer. But she's got a new life now. We have a new life. You know, Mr. Fanning, I think I'm in love for the first time. I looked at this guy. Honest, open, so much like his father. And I felt my heart sink. He didn't know he'd become part of someone else's lie, that the woman he was in love with wasn't just deceiving him, she was leading a double life. I'm happy for you, Liam, I said, raising my mug. Your father would be proud. We drank, and the conversation turned to other topics. Liam talked about his job, about his plans to buy a new car, about the fishing he'd been doing lately. I listened half-heartedly, my thoughts constantly returning to Brianna and Trevor. After about an hour, Liam looked at his watch and said, Excuse me, Mr. Fanning, I need to use the restroom. Can you order me another beer? My treat. Sure. I nodded. He got up and headed to the far end of the bar where the restrooms were. His phone remained on the counter, a black smartphone with cracked protective glass. I stared at it, fighting myself. I'd never been a fan of prying, but this was about my family, my grandson. And then my phone screen lit up. A message had come in. I glanced up and saw the sender's name, Brianna, and the beginning of the text. "Meet me tomorrow at 2 at our place. I'll be free until 6. I looked around. Liam was nowhere to be seen. The bartender was serving customers at the other end of the bar. On impulse, I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and quickly snapped a picture of the screen of Liam's phone with the message. Liam's phone went out again, and I tucked mine back into my pocket just in time. Liam was coming back. "Sorry for the wait," he said, sitting down in his chair. "Oh, did I get a text?" He picked up his phone, read the message, and smiled. "Brianna wants to meet tomorrow," he said, as if that told me something. "We have a special place, the Pine Cone Cafe on the edge of town. Quiet, cozy." I nodded, making a mental note. Pine Cone. So that's where they meet. We sat at the bar for another hour or so, then said our goodbyes. Liam promised to keep in touch, and I invited him to stop by for a visit. We both knew we'd probably only see each other again by chance, a few years from now. Such is life. On the way home, I reflected on what I had learned. Brianna, my grandson's wife, had a relationship with my late friend's son. She had lied to Liam about the divorce. She probably lied to Trevor about where she was spending her time. And now Trevor was asking me for money for a house to live in with a woman who was lying to him. I could feel the anger building up inside, not just at Brianna, although her behavior was inexcusable, but also at Trevor for not seeing what was happening right under his nose, and at myself for letting family ties weaken to the point where my grandson only comes to me when he needs money. I woke up early the next day with a clear plan of action. I needed proof, irrefutable proof that Brianna wouldn't be able to deny or explain away. One screenshot of the message wasn't enough. I got dressed, grabbed the keys to my old pickup truck, and drove into town. My first stop was the Pine Cone Cafe, an unremarkable establishment in a quiet neighborhood, with a wooden sign and windows overlooking a small park. It was the perfect place for secret meetings, secluded enough to avoid running into people I knew, but not so secluded as to arouse suspicion. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. At this hour, around 10 in the morning, there weren't many visitors. A couple of older men at a corner table, a young mother with a child at the window, a lone man with a laptop at the bar. Behind the cash register stood a tall man in his 40s, with a short haircut and a neat beard. His face looked familiar. "Steve?" I asked, coming closer. "Steve Randall?" The man smiled, recognition in his eyes. "Mr. Fanning. How many years? How many winters?" Steve was the son of an old neighbor of mine. He used to work part-time for me as a teenager, helping with roof repairs and other chores around the house. Good kid, hard worker. I'd heard he'd started his own business, but I didn't know it was a cafe. "Your place?" I looked around the cafe with sincere approval. The place looked cozy and well kept. "Yes, for 5 years now." Steve straightened up proudly. "What can I get you?" "On the house, of course. Coffee will suffice." I sat down at the counter. "And maybe a little information." Steve raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything as he went about making coffee. When I had a steaming cup in front of me, he leaned on the counter and asked, "What information are you interested in, Mr. Fanning?" I sipped my coffee. Strong, good. Then I pulled out my phone and showed Steve the picture of Brianna I'd discreetly taken from Liam's phone. "Does this woman ever come here?" Steve looked at the photo and nodded. "Yes, Brianna. A regular customer. Usually comes in with a young guy, dark-haired, tall. They often sit at that table over there." He nodded at a nook against the far wall. "Do you know them well?" "How to say?" Steve shrugged. "They've been coming in a few times a week for about 3 months now. They always order the same thing. She gets a caramel latte. He gets an Americano. Sometimes they get sandwiches or pastries. They usually sit for 2 hours talking, holding hands. Just a regular couple in love. I nodded, feeling my insides clench. Just a couple in love. If Steve only knew. "Steve, I need your help," I said, lowering my voice. "It's about my family." I told him, omitting some details, that Brianna was my grandson's wife and that she was seeing another man behind his back. Steve listened intently without interrupting. "They should be here at 2 o'clock today," I concluded. "I need proof. Do you have any security cameras?" Steve nodded at a small black hemisphere in the corner of the ceiling. "I do. The recordings are kept for 2 weeks. Can you make me a copy of the footage when they come in today?" Steve looked uncertain. "I don't know, Mr. Fanning. It's kind of—" "I understand," I interrupted. "But imagine it's your family. Your son or your grandson. Would you want him to live a lie?" Steve sighed, then nodded. "Okay, but only because it's you and because it's your family we're talking about." "Thank you," I finished my coffee. "I'll be back tonight for the tape. And one more favor, don't tell them I came by." "Sure." Steve extended his hand for a handshake. "I'll make it right." I shook his hand, left a generous tip, and left the cafe. I spent the next few hours driving aimlessly around the city, trying to gather my thoughts. Part of me wanted to go home, forget everything I'd learned, just write a check to Trevor and go on with my secluded life. But the other part, the stronger part, demanded the truth, no matter how bitter it was. At 7 o'clock that evening, I returned to the Pine Cone. The cafe was almost empty, a weeknight, few customers. Steve was behind the counter, wiping down the coffee machine. When he saw me, he nodded and pulled a small flash drive from under the counter. "It's all here," he said quietly, handing me the drive. "They came in at 2 sharp, sat there until 6. Everything was the same as usual, talking, hugging, kissing. They looked happy." "Thanks, Steve." I put the flash drive in my pocket. "I owe you one." "Forget it." He waved his hand. "Just be careful with it. Family matters are always complicated." I nodded and walked out of the cafe. I sat in the car for a long time without starting the engine, staring at the darkening sky through the windshield. What I was about to do would change my grandson's life forever. Perhaps he would hate me for it. Perhaps it would finally shatter our already fragile bond. But better the bitter truth than the sweet lie. I've lived a lie long enough to know that it eats away at the soul from the inside out, slowly and inevitably. I started the car and drove home, determined to send Trevor not a check, but a box of evidence of his wife's infidelity. Let it be my last gift to my grandson, a chance to start my life over, without the lies. That night I couldn't sleep for a long time. I tossed and turned, thinking about the box I had prepared for Trevor. Inside were printed pictures of Brianna and Liam, a screenshot of their correspondence, a thumb drive with a recording from the cafe, and a letter I'd handwritten. With shaking fingers and aching joints, I laid out everything I'd learned about his wife's double life. In the morning, I took the package to the post office. The pretty girl behind the counter offered me a form to fill out for mailing. The pen slipped from my fingers as I typed in Trevor's address. "Insurance?" she asked, not looking up from her computer. "No," I answered. "No valuables in there." It was ironic. There was a family-destroying bomb hidden in that box. How can you put a dollar value on something like that? "Delivery will take 3 to 5 days, the girl said, counting out my change. I nodded and walked outside. It was done. There was no turning back. I spent the next 4 days in a fog. I couldn't focus on anything, constantly imagining Trevor opening the box, seeing the evidence, his face contorted with pain and anger. Several times I reached for the phone to call him, to warn him, but each time I stopped myself. He had to know the truth, no matter how bitter it was. On the 5th day, the phone rang. I didn't answer. I watched Trevor's name flash across the screen and couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone. What would I tell him? What words would I use to explain what I'd done? The phone went silent, and a minute later a message came through. "We need to talk." Only 3 words, but they spoke volumes. The box arrived. Trevor found out. I didn't call him back. Cowardly, I know, but I needed time to get my head together. Trevor needed time to process what he'd learned. Trevor stood at the window, looking out at the driveway. The mailman had just left, leaving a shoebox-sized box. It bore his grandfather's name, Arl Fanning, and the sender's address in Columbia Falls. "What's in it?" Brianna asked, entering the room. She was wearing a business suit. She was going to work. "A package from Grandpa," Trevor answered, picking up the box. It was light, but tightly packed. "Probably a check." "Great." Brianna glanced at her watch. "I gotta go. We'll celebrate tonight? I'll finish early. We can have dinner at the Riviera." "Sure," Trevor smiled at her. "I'll call the bank and find out what I need to do to make the arrangements." Brianna kissed him on the cheek and walked out. The front door slammed. The engine of her car rumbled. Trevor walked to the kitchen, took a knife, and carefully cut the packing tape on the box. Inside was an envelope labeled "Read First." Trevor opened it and unfolded the letter. "Trevor, this is a heavy letter and it's not easy for me to write, but I must tell you what I have learned. I think you have a right to know the truth. 2 months ago, I happened to meet Liam Talbot, the son of my late friend and colleague Bryce, in a bar. We got to talking, and he told me about a woman he was seeing, showed me pictures of her. This woman is your wife, Brianna. I know it sounds unbelievable. That's why I've collected the evidence you'll find in this box. Photos from Liam's cell phone, a screenshot of their text messages, surveillance footage from the Pinecone Cafe where they meet regularly. Liam believes Brianna's recently divorced. She lied to him, just like she's probably lying to you. I'm sorry to break this news. I've been considering whether or not to get involved, but I decided you deserve to know the truth. What you do with that information is up to you. If you want to talk, you know where to find me. Arl Fanning. Trevor reread the letter 3 times before the meaning of what was written reached him. His hands began to tremble, and there was a strange feeling of emptiness in his chest. He slowly put the letter aside and looked into the box. There were photographs lying there, a dozen glossy prints. Each one showed Brianna with some man. They were sitting in a cafe, holding hands, laughing. In one picture, they were kissing. Brianna looked happy, that special, glowing happy that Trevor hadn't seen her in a long time. Next to the photos was a sheet with a printed screenshot of the correspondence. A message from Brianna. "Meet me tomorrow at 2 at our place. I'll be free until 6. A simple text, but in the context of everything else, crushing. At the very bottom of the box was a flash drive. Trevor picked it up, walked over to the laptop on the kitchen table and plugged it in. There was a single file on the flash drive, a video recording. He started it up. A recording from a surveillance camera mounted in the ceiling of the cafe. It was black and white, but the faces were clearly visible. Brianna enters, followed by a man in his 30s. They sit down at a table, order something, talk. He takes her hand. She smiles. The recording is silent, but you don't need to hear it to realize these people are close. Very close. Trevor stopped the video and leaned back in his chair. His head was buzzing like he'd drunk a bottle of whiskey in one gulp. His wife, Brianna, who they've been married to for 3 years, with whom they plan to buy a house and have kids, is seeing another man, cheats on him, betrays him. He sat like that for at least an hour, staring into the space in front of him. Then he got up, went into the living room and poured himself a whiskey, a double shot, even though it was only 10 o'clock in the morning. He drank it in one gulp, unable to taste it. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A message from Brianna. "I forgot to tell you, I have a client meeting at 2 today. I'll be late until 6. Love you." Trevor stared at the screen and something broke inside him. Meeting with a client at 2. I'll be late until 6. Exactly the same words as the message to Liam. She hadn't even bothered to come up with different excuses. He dialed the number of the travel agency where Brianna worked. Horizon, how can I help you? A woman's voice sounded in the receiver. Hello, Trevor tried to speak calmly. Can I speak to Brianna Fanning? Just a moment. There was a pause. I'm sorry, but Brianna's not in today. She's taking some time off for personal reasons. I see. Trevor squeezed the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. Thank you. Time off. Not a client meeting. Another lie. He sat down on the couch, feeling a hurricane of emotions growing inside. Pain, anger, humiliation. He wanted to scream, to break dishes, to tear the house apart. But instead he poured more whiskey, drank it, and waited. It was almost 6 o'clock when he heard the sound of a car pulling up. The door slammed, the keys jingled in the lock, and Brianna entered the house, carrying bags from the grocery store. Hi, she called out from the hallway. I bought steaks and wine. Let's celebrate our future. She stopped talking as she entered the living room and saw Trevor. He was sitting in an armchair with photos, a letter, and a laptop with an open video on the coffee table in front of him. What's this? Her voice changed instantly, becoming high and tense. You tell me, Trevor replied, trying to remain calm. How was the meeting with the client? Brianna put the bags on the floor. Her gaze flickered to the photos and her face turned pale. Trevor, I can explain. Really? He stood up, feeling his knees shake. Can you explain why you're cheating on me with some guy named Liam? Why you're telling him you're divorced? Why you're lying to me about where you spend your time? It's not what you think. She took a step toward him, but Trevor backed away. What is it, Brianna? Tell me. Because judging by these pictures, he pointed to the table, it's exactly what I think it is. Brianna looked at the pictures, and her face changed from frightened to hard, almost angry. Where did you get this? My grandfather sent it, instead of the check we asked for. Can you believe it? I asked him for money for a house for us, and he sent proof that my wife was a lying whore. Don't you dare call me that, Brianna screamed. Your grandfather had no right to interfere in our lives. This is our business. Ours? Trevor laughed bitterly. No, honey, it's your business. You're seeing another man. You tell him you're divorced. You lie to everyone around you, to me, to him, to your coworkers. So tell me the truth for once. What is this? An affair? Or something serious? Brianna bit her lip, clearly weighing what to say. Then she sighed and sank down onto the couch. It's complicated, she began. I met Liam by chance. We got to talking and, I don't know, something came up between us. I didn't plan anything like that, really. I just wanted to have some fun, feel alive. Alive? Trevor interjected. How do you feel with me? Dead? No, of course not, she rubbed her forehead. But you're always so busy with your work, with your friends. We don't have the spark we used to have. It's different with Liam. He sees the real me, you know? And I see some other Brianna? Trevor could feel the anger building. The one who's comfortable living in our house, using my money, asking my grandfather for financial help and, in her spare time, fucking another man. Don't say that, she shrieked. It's not all just an affair, Trevor. I think I'm in love with him. The silence that followed those words was deafening. Trevor looked at the woman he considered his wife, his partner, his best friend, and saw a complete stranger. You told him you were divorced, he finally said. Brianna nodded without looking up. Why? Because it was easier, she said quietly, looking down at the floor. I didn't want to complicate things right away. And then it was too late to tell the truth. Were you going to leave me for him? She didn't answer, and that was more eloquent than any words. Is that why you needed the money for the house? Trevor felt his insides grow cold. Were you planning to buy real estate and then run away to your lover? No, she raised her head. No, of course not. I didn't know what I wanted. I was confused, Trevor. Confused, he shook his head. No, honey. Confused about the readings, about the route, about the calculations. And what you did was a deliberate deception. Day after day, month after month. He walked to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Thoughts fluttered like frightened birds. I want you to leave, he said without turning around. What? Brianna's voice shook. Leave. Tonight. Pack your things and go. Trevor, we can talk about this. She stood up and walked over to him. Maybe we should see a marriage counselor, try to… No. He turned and his gaze was hard. There's nothing to discuss. You've lied to me, cheated on me, planned some kind of life for yourself behind my back. I don't even want to be in the same room with you, let alone discuss our relationship. But this is my home too. A steely tone appeared in her voice. You can't just kick me out. I can. Trevor pointed to the pictures. And if you try to argue this in court, I'll show you those pictures. And the video. And I'll tell them how you lied to your lover about being divorced. I think the judge will be interested. Brianna clenched her fists, her face contorted with anger. This is all because of your damn grandfather. The damn old man couldn't just send the money like he was asked. No, he had to stick his nose in other people's business, spying on me, gathering evidence. He was always turning you against me. He saw you once in his life, at my mother's funeral, Trevor said dryly. Apparently, he recognized your nature, unlike me. Leave him out of this. You did all this, he circled the pictures, not my grandfather. But he could have just sent the money, Brianna shouted. Instead, he ruined our family. No, Trevor shook his head. You ruined our family when you decided to look for happiness on the side. Grandfather just showed me the truth, and I'm grateful to him for that. Brianna stared at him for a few seconds, then grabbed her bag and headed for the stairs. I'll get the essentials, she said over her shoulder. I'll come back tomorrow for the rest. Whatever you want, Trevor said. Just let me know in advance. I don't want to see you. She stopped halfway, turned around as if she wanted to say something, but changed her mind and continued up the hill. Trevor could hear her walking around upstairs, opening cupboards, throwing something into a bag, the sounds of an ordinary life that had just crumbled. Their marriage, their plans, their future all appeared to be built on the sand of lies. 20 minutes later, Brianna came downstairs with a large bag. Her face was pale, her eyes reddened. She'd been crying. I'll call about the rest of the stuff, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Trevor nodded silently. And leave the keys, he added when she was already at the door. Brianna took a bunch of keys out of her bag, separated two, and put them on the table in the hallway. Then she opened the door and stopped on the threshold. You know, she said without turning around, I really loved you once. It's just, something's changed. Go away, was all Trevor said. The door closed. There was the sound of the engine starting, the rustle of tires on the gravel of the driveway, and everything went quiet. Trevor stood in the middle of the empty house, feeling the reality around him shatter. 3 years of marriage. 3 years that now seemed fake, a sham, a waste of time. He went back into the living room, gathered up the photos and the letter, put everything back in the box. Then he sat down on the couch and, for the first time in that long day, allowed himself to feel pain, a real, deep pain, stitching through his whole body. The pain of a betrayed man who suddenly realized that his life had been built on lies. The day after the box was shipped, I hardly left the house. I sat in an old armchair by the window, watching the occasional passerby and the crow that had taken a fancy to the neighbor's maple tree. In my hand I held a glass of whiskey, though the clock showed only 3 in the afternoon. At my age, I'm not afraid of being judged for early libations. What difference does it make what time of day one tries to drown out the guilt and doubts tearing at one's soul? I had done the right thing, I told myself. My grandson deserved to know the truth about his wife. And yet, there was still a part of me that regretted what I'd done, not because I doubted the truth of the evidence I'd gathered. It was because I knew the truth would hurt Trevor. Inevitable, necessary, but no less painful. The phone rang around 6 in the evening. I flinched at the sharp sound splashing whiskey on my pants. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello?" I coughed, trying to make my voice sound more sober than I felt. "Are you pleased with yourself?" A woman's voice, full of venom. "Proud of what you did, Mr. Fanning?" "Brianna." I recognized her immediately, tears mixed with rage in her voice. "You destroyed my family!" She was practically screaming. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I didn't say a word. What could I say to her? That I was sorry? No, that would be a lie. I didn't regret revealing the truth, only that it was so bitter. "You don't even know me," she continued without waiting for an answer. "You've only seen me once in your life, and you think you have the right to judge, to pry into other people's lives, to spy, to gather evidence. Who gave you that right?" "No one." I finally found the words. "I just did what I thought was right." "The right thing?" Her voice broke into a shriek. "The right thing would have been to send the money you were asked for, to help your grandson, not to ruin his marriage." "You ruined his marriage," I said quietly, but firmly. "When you decided to live a double life, when you lied to him and that guy Liam." "You don't know anything about my relationship with Trevor," she said, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "About what we've been through, about how I feel." "Right," I agreed. "I don't know, but I do know that honesty is the foundation of any relationship, and you lied to everyone around you." There was a pause. I could hear her ragged breathing, muffled sobs. "I loved Trevor," she said finally. "I really did. It's just, things had gotten so complicated, so complicated." "I'm not your confessor, Brianna," I replied, feeling tired. "And I'm not your judge. I'm just an old man who wanted his grandson to know the truth." "At the cost of his happiness?" She laughed bitterly. "What's the point of that? He was happy before you interfered." "Was he?" I asked the question that had plagued me from the beginning. "Or was he just living in the illusion of happiness you were creating?" Silence again, a longer silence. "You didn't just ruin my marriage," she finally said. "You ruined Liam's life too. Trevor contacted him, told him everything, showed him the pictures. Now Liam doesn't want to see me. He thinks I used him." "Didn't you?" I asked. "No," she exclaimed. "I loved him too. In a different way, but I loved him. He saw something in me that Trevor hadn't seen in a long time. He made me feel special, wanted." "And you were willing to lie to both of them for that feeling?" I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. "Lying to your husband about where you spend your time, lying to your lover about your marital status." "You don't understand," her voice trembled again. "No one does. I just wanted to be happy." "At the expense of other people's happiness," I summarized. "You know, Brianna, I've lived a long life, and one thing I've learned for sure is that happiness built on lies is never lasting. Sooner or later the truth comes out, and then the pain gets worse." "You're an old, angry man," she said after a pause, "lonely and unwanted. You ruined my life because you're jealous of other people's happiness, because you've been deprived of it for a long time." Her words hurt more than I expected. Maybe because there was some truth to them. I really was lonely, really jealous of those who had family, love, intimacy. "Maybe you're right," I said quietly. "But that doesn't undo what you did. I hope you'll be happy now that you've ruined everything." Her voice sounded calmer, but with cold anger. "I hope your conscience will let you sleep at night." With those words, she hung up. I sat looking at the phone in my hand, feeling a strange emptiness inside. Not regret. No, I still thought I had done the right thing, More like sadness that the world is so cruel that the truth often hurts those we love. I finished my whiskey, thinking about my grandson. How is he coping? How is he feeling right now? I wanted to call him, but I was afraid he wouldn't want to talk to me. That he'd blame me for ruining his marriage, like Brianna. The phone rang again 2 hours later. This time I recognized the number. Trevor. Grandpa? His voice sounded hoarse, like he'd been screaming or crying for a long time. Trevor. I felt my throat constrict. How are you? It was a stupid question. How could he be? His world had just crumbled. I don't know, he said slowly, choosing his words. I'm still trying to realize what happened, that it's all true. I'm sorry, I said, and this time it was the honest truth. I'm sorry I had to be the bearer of such news. Why didn't you just call? There was no accusation in his voice, just tiredness. Why did you have to gather all this evidence? I sighed, staring out the window at the darkening sky. Because I knew you wouldn't take my word for it. I wouldn't. These things, they seem impossible until you see the proof with your own eyes. Trevor was silent. I could hear his breathing, heavy, ragged. How did you know? He finally asked. How did it all start in the first place? I told him. The chance encounter with Liam at the bar, the way I recognized Brianna from the photos, the conversation during which I'd found out she'd lied to her lover about her marital status, about taking a picture of the message on Liam's phone, how he got the security footage from the cafe. I remember Bryce, Trevor said when I mentioned Liam's father. He came over a couple times when I was a kid, tall with a bushy mustache. Yeah, I smiled at the memory. The mustache was his pride. We worked together for almost 30 years. He was, a true friend, the once-in-a-lifetime kind. Would he approve of what you did? Trevor's question wasn't a trick, just genuine curiosity. I thought about it, remembering Bryce, his direct gaze, his honesty, his loyalty to his family and friends. I guess so, I finally answered. Bryce always said that the truth, no matter how bitter, was better than the sweetest lie. He was a straightforward man, could take offense at a harsh word, but he never lied. How's his son? Trevor asked. Liam? I shook my head. I don't know. I've only seen him once in the last few years. He seemed like a nice guy, open, honest, like a father. I talked to him. Trevor's voice got quieter. After I got your package, I found him on social media, texted him, then we called. I held my breath. He didn't know Brianna was married. Trevor chuckled bitterly. Can you believe it? She'd told him she'd recently divorced after a rough relationship, that her ex-husband was a controlling tyrant she'd barely escaped from. I closed my eyes. What an elaborate lie, making Trevor look like a monster to justify her deception. He was in shock, Trevor continued. He didn't believe me at first. He thought I was the controlling ex-husband who couldn't let go. But when I showed him our wedding photos, our documents, there was no doubt in his mind. Does he blame you? I asked, even though the answer seemed obvious. No, Trevor sighed, more like himself for not suspecting anything. And her, of course, mostly her. There was a pause. I could hear Trevor rearranging things, glass clinking against glass. Pouring a drink, I decided. He needed it now. She called me, I said finally. Brianna, today. I know, Trevor answered. She said she was going to, that you needed to hear how you ruined her life. And yours too, apparently. Did I? There was a thoughtfulness in his voice. I've been thinking about that a lot today. About what was really ruined. A marriage that turned out to be a fake? A relationship built on lies? Maybe you didn't destroy it, but, open my eyes? I was silent, not knowing what to say. I didn't expect this reaction. I was mad at you at first, Trevor continued. When I saw the pictures, the video, I thought, What right did he have to interfere? Why couldn't he just send the money like I asked? And what changed? I asked quietly. I talked to Liam, Trevor said, and I realized that we were both victims. Both of us were deceived, and if it wasn't for you, we'd still be living a lie. I would have bought a house for a woman who was probably planning on leaving me, had kids with her, built a lifetime on a foundation of sand. His words brought a strange relief. Trevor didn't blame me, at least not completely. But I still don't understand, he continued after a pause. Why did she do that? Why didn't she just leave me if she was bored with me? Why all the deception? People are rarely completely rational when it comes to feelings, I said, thinking about my own life, about the decisions I'd made under the influence of emotion. Maybe she did love you both, in different ways, but she did, and she didn't want to choose. At the expense of our ignorance, Trevor said bitterly, at the expense of our pain. Yes, I didn't soften the truth. People can be selfish, especially when it comes to their own happiness. There was silence again. I could hear Trevor sipping from his glass, the chair or armchair creaking beneath him. You know what the weirdest thing is? He finally said it. I'm trying to remember when Brianna and I were truly happy. When was the last time I felt this authenticity in our relationship? And I can't. It's like it was all a game from the beginning. I don't think that's true, I objected cautiously. People rarely start a relationship with the intention of lying. Rather, it happens gradually, step by step. Maybe, Trevor sighed. But now I feel like I didn't know her at all, the real her. I understood the feeling. After Lorraine died, I sometimes wondered if I'd really known her too. All the little things she never told me, the dreams she never shared, thoughts she kept to herself. What are you going to do now? I asked, trying to keep the question neutral. I don't know, Trevor answered. Divorce, of course. It's out of the question. But beyond that, I don't know. Maybe I'll leave here. Too many memories. What about the house? The one you wanted to take out a mortgage on? It's not relevant anymore, he grinned bitterly. You know what's funny, though? I can still afford it. Turns out, if I don't spend money on the expensive restaurants, jewelry, and vacations that Brianna wanted, I have enough savings for a down payment. I remained silent, but I felt a stab of pain inside. So Brianna was spending his money knowing she was cheating, leading a double life and still letting Trevor pay for her whims. I didn't call just to tell you about the conversation with Liam, Trevor said after a pause. I wanted to thank you for the truth, as painful as it was. You're not mad at me? I asked, still in disbelief. I am, he answered honestly. Part of me is angry, but the other part, grateful, and that part is stronger. We were silent for a while, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. Then Trevor said something I hadn't expected. I'd like to come to you. I'd like to talk to you in person, if you don't mind. I felt my heart skip a beat. Trevor wanted to come, to see me. After all these years, after everything that had happened. Of course, I tried to keep my voice steady, but I couldn't hide my excitement. You're always welcome. How about next week? I could hear the uncertainty in his voice too. I've got some things to take care of here. With work, with the lawyer. Anytime, I said. I'm not going anywhere. Good, he said quietly. Then I'll call you one of these days, and we'll talk about the details. Sure. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Old age sentimentality, I thought with a chuckle. Thank you, Grandpa, Trevor said quietly before hanging up, for everything. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time, staring out the window at the night sky. For the first time in years, I felt something resembling hope. Maybe something good could grow out of the bitter truth I'd uncovered. Maybe Trevor and I could rebuild what had been shattered by years of silence and estrangement, or maybe not. Life is rarely simple or predictable. Trevor could change his mind, cool off, start blaming me again for interfering. Brianna could have found a way to win him back, to convince him that things weren't what they seemed. But today, in this moment, I allowed myself to hope that the truth, however bitter, would eventually lead to healing, that my grandson will find the strength to survive the betrayal and start a new life, that perhaps in that new life there will be a place for me. I got up from my chair, feeling my joints aching, and walked over to the dresser where I kept old photographs. I found the picture I was looking for. Olivia holding little Trevor, smiling at the camera. My daughter, my grandson, my family. "I did the right thing," I whispered, looking at the picture. "Tell me I did the right thing." Of course, Olivia didn't answer. The dead don't speak to the living no matter how much we'd like them to. But looking at her smile, at her son's happy face in her hands, I felt a strange calm. I put the picture back where it belonged and went into the kitchen. For the first time in a long time, I wanted to cook a real dinner instead of reheated convenience foods. Tomorrow I'd have to go to the store and buy groceries, get the house in order, be ready for Trevor if he actually decides to come, and if he doesn't, well, I can live with that. Like I've survived everything else in my long, complicated life. After all, what could be worse than the loneliness I'd long since gotten used to? 3 weeks passed after our conversation with Trevor, but he never showed up. At first I waited for a call. I told him he'd contact me. We'd discuss the details. Then I got worried. I called, but the phone always went to voicemail. I left messages, at first mundane, then increasingly anxious. No response. In the 4th week, I made my way into town for groceries. Usually, I prefer to go to a small store a couple blocks away, but that day I decided to go to a large supermarket on the outskirts of town. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to get some air, to get out of the 4 walls that seemed to shrink more and more every day. At the entrance to the supermarket, I ran into Martha Hendricks, the wife of my neighbor who lived 3 houses down from me. She saw me first and called out to me, "Arl, I haven't seen you in a while." Martha was the kind of woman who knew everything about everyone within a 5-mile radius. Friendly, but irrepressibly curious. If there was anything like a living newspaper in Columbia Falls, it was her. "Hello, Martha." I tried to smile, but it must not have been very convincing. "How's John?" "Still struggling with arthritis," she waved her hand. "But you know him. The old man doesn't give up." We exchanged a few more sentences about the weather and rising prices, and then she said, "Did you hear the news? Your grandson sold the house." I froze, feeling my heart skip a beat. "Trevor? Sold the house?" "Yes. The deal closed last week," Martha said, as if she were reporting something as mundane as a weather report. "Jane Collins. You remember her? The realtor on Main Street. She handled the deal. Said it went very quickly. Buyers didn't even haggle." I stared at her, trying to comprehend what I was hearing. Trevor? What about him?" "He's gone," Martha shrugged. "No one really knows where. Jane said he mentioned something about the West Coast, but he didn't name a specific place. And you know what's weird?" She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "He left alone. No wife. People say they were divorced." I nodded silently, not knowing what to say. So Trevor had decided to make a fresh start after all, to leave not only Brianna behind, but a whole town full of memories. "They were such a beautiful couple," Martha continued, clearly not noticing my condition. "I remember them at the town festival last year, holding hands the whole time, laughing. Who would have thought it?" "Yeah," I said. "Who'd have thought it?" "You probably know more," she looked at me with undisguised curiosity. "It's my own blood, after all." "No, Martha," I shook my head. "Trevor and I haven't been very close in recent years. That was the understatement of the century. We hadn't just been not very close. We'd barely communicated at all, and now, apparently, we've lost touch altogether." "It's a shame." She sounded genuinely upset, though I suspected the upset had more to do with the missing information than with my family problems. "If you find out anything, let me know, okay?" I promised, knowing I never would, and we parted ways. I wandered around the supermarket, mechanically putting groceries in my basket, not thinking about what I was taking. There was only one thing on my mind. Trevor was gone. Not just not coming to see me like he promised, but leaving town completely, without saying goodbye, without telling me where he was going. Maybe I should have called him again, or even drive to his house. But it was too late. The house was sold. Trevor was gone. When I got home with the bags, which contained 3 packs of cereal and canned pineapple I didn't need, but no milk or bread, I sat in the chair by the window and stared at the phone for a long time, wondering if I should try again. What if he finally answered? But I didn't call. Something told me that Trevor didn't want to talk, doesn't want to hear my voice, doesn't want any reminders of a past I'd turned upside down with my own hands. The days stretched slowly, like thick molasses. I went out on the porch, looked at the mountains in the distance, listened to the birds singing, tried to read, but the letters blurred before my eyes. In the evenings, I'd get a bottle of whiskey and have a drink or two, looking at the pictures on the mantelpiece. My wife Lorraine, my daughter Olivia, little Trevor. It's been a long time. 6 weeks after our last conversation with Trevor, the letter carrier brought a letter, a plain white envelope with stamps and a postmark from Seattle. I recognized my grandson's handwriting immediately, even though I hadn't seen it in years. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a doubled folded piece of paper, not a card, not a photograph, just a letter. I unfolded it and began to read. "Grandpa, I'm sorry I didn't get in touch sooner. The last few weeks have been difficult. I've been trying to make sense of myself, of my life, of what happened. I know I promised to come, and I'm sorry I haven't kept that promise. The truth is, I couldn't. Every time I thought about going to see you, a strange feeling came over me. Not anger, not resentment, more like fear. Fear of coming face to face with the man who showed me the truth about my life. A truth that part of me would rather not know. Brianna and I divorced. The process was quick. She didn't contest anything. She just wanted it over sooner. I sold the house. Too many memories, too much pain within those walls. I'm in Seattle now. Got a job at a technology company, renting a small apartment overlooking the bay. I'm trying to make a fresh start. I've been thinking about writing to you for a long time. I didn't know what to say. Thank you for opening my eyes, or curse you for destroying the illusion of happiness I was living in. I still don't know the answer to that, but one thing I've realized for sure is that I can't keep in touch with the past. No one from the past, including you. It's not out of anger or resentment. It just hurts too much. Too many memories, too many disappointments. I need to move on, build a new life with no room for the ghosts of the past. I hope you understand. And despite everything, I'm grateful for the truth. It broke my heart, but it may have saved me from more pain in the future. Take care, Trevor." I reread the letter twice, then folded it carefully and returned it to the envelope. There was a strange emptiness spilling inside, not pain, not bitterness, just nothing. It was as if the last thread that connected me to life had been severed. Trevor didn't want to see me. He didn't want to talk to me. He thanked me for the truth, but that truth had cost me my last loved one. I got up and walked over to the dresser where I kept the bottle of Jack Daniels. I poured the whiskey into the glass, not 2 fingers as usual, but almost to the brim. Then returned to the chair by the window, taking a picture of Olivia from the mantelpiece. My daughter smiled from the picture, young, beautiful, full of life. She was 25 when this picture was taken, 10 years before the accident that cut her life short. "What have I done, Olivia?" I whispered, looking at her face. "I've tried to do what was best, but it's just, I didn't finish the sentence. Why should I? The dead don't answer the questions of the living, no matter how much we want them to." The whiskey burned my throat, but it was no relief. I looked out the window at my neglected garden, at the mountains in the distance, at the clouds floating across the sky, and thought about the price of truth. That sometimes knowledge does not liberate, but enslaves. That by revealing deception, we destroy not only the lie, but also the fragile happiness built on it. Was I right to send Trevor that box? Or should I have kept silent, let him live in ignorance, in the illusion of a happy marriage? Maybe he never would have found out about Brianna's infidelity. Maybe she would have ended things with Liam when she realized she was in danger of losing her husband. Maybe they would have been happy, in their own imperfect way, but happy. There's no way of knowing that now. I made a choice for all of them. I decided that truth trumps happiness. And the result is, Trevor is gone, starting a new life thousands of miles away. Brianna, who knows where she is or what happened to her? Liam, my dead friend's son, also left with a broken heart and shattered illusions. And me? I sit alone in an empty house, with a bottle of whiskey and pictures of people who are no longer in my life. Alone as I was before that unfortunate meeting with Liam, before Trevor called, before this whole thing. Maybe Brianna was right. Maybe I was jealous of other people's happiness, ruined it out of envy, out of the bitterness of my own loneliness. No, I told myself firmly. It wasn't about envy. I sincerely wanted to protect my grandson, to protect him from lies, from betrayal. I wanted him to know the truth, however bitter it might be. But the truth was destructive. It didn't set him free. It divided him. It didn't heal. It wounded. And yet, still, I couldn't bring myself to regret what I'd done. Imagining Trevor living with a woman who was deceiving him, planning children with her, building a future on a shaky foundation of lies. No, that would be worse. Sooner or later, the truth would have come out anyway, and then the pain would be even worse. I finished the whiskey and set the empty glass on the windowsill. The sun was setting, coloring the sky shades of orange and pink. A beautiful evening, one of those evenings you want to admire when you're not alone. Trevor's letter was still on the table next to the chair. I picked it up again, but I didn't read it. The words were already imprinted in my memory. I can't keep in touch with the past, not with anyone from the past, including you. Well, that's his choice, and I have to respect it no matter how much it hurts. Trevor is entitled to a new life without the ghosts of the past, without me. I returned Olivia's picture to the mantelpiece, next to the pictures of Lorraine and little Trevor, my family, my lost family. Then I went to the window and took a long look at the mountains, lit by the setting sun. The sunsets in Columbia Falls are always beautiful, especially in the fall, when the air is clear and clean and the sky seems infinitely high. It is said that before one dies, one sees one's entire life flashing before one's eyes. I wonder what moments I'll see when my turn comes. Lorraine's wedding, Olivia's birth, or the last few years, lonely, empty, filled only with memories of what was and regrets for what didn't happen. I poured another whiskey even though I knew I shouldn't. At my age, alcohol is not a good companion, but tonight, I didn't care. Tonight I wanted to forget, to get away from my thoughts, from the pain, from the realization of the irreversibility of what had happened. Truth. What a strange word. We all strive for it, say we value it above all else. But when we come face to face with it, we often regret our choice, because the truth is rarely pleasant. More often it's bitter, painful, destructive. I took a sip of whiskey, feeling the warmth spread through my body. It was getting dark outside the window, and the stars were beginning to show in the inky blue sky. It was at times like this that I felt my loneliness most keenly. Lorraine and I used to love sitting on the porch on summer evenings, looking up at the stars, talking about the past and the future. Now I look at them alone, and only talk to ghosts. The whiskey in the glass had run out, but I didn't feel like getting up for another shot. I felt tired, not physically, but something deep, soulful. tired of a life that was longer than I'd bargained for and much lonelier. Trevor was starting a new life, without me, without Brianna, without everything that tied him to the past. Maybe that's the right thing to do. Maybe that's what wisdom is all about, being able to let go, to move on, to not look back. I've never been good at that, always clinging to the past, to memories, to the ghosts of people gone. Maybe that's why I was stuck in this house, in this town, among these mountains I'd seen every day of my life. Trevor was wiser than me, stronger. He found the strength to leave, to start over. And while it pains me that there's no room for me in this new life, I can't help but respect his decision. I took the empty glass to the kitchen and stood at the sink for a while, staring out the dark window at my face, an old, tired face, with deep wrinkles and faded eyes. The face of a man who had lived a long life but had never learned to be happy. Back in the living room, I took another look at the pictures on the mantelpiece. My family. Everything I had. Everything I'd lost. "Good night," I whispered, turning to them as I did every night. No one answered. No one ever answered. I turned off the light and slowly walked up the creaky stairs to my bedroom. Tomorrow would be another day, as empty and lonely as today. Like all the days in my life since I shipped that box, since I decided that the truth was more important than anything else. Sometimes, even when we do the right thing, we're still alone. That's the price of truth, a price I've paid in full.